A person has to face the harsh reality that he's been living a lie. How far can madness take him? This is the story of Joker from 2019. The movie begins with Arthur Fleck getting ready for his job while the news plays in the background about the messy state Gotham City is in. Arthur is putting up his clown makeup for his job. Seeing his reflection in the mirror, he forces a smile on his face using his hands. It seems hurtful, while a single tear runs down his eye. We get to the next scene, where we see Arthur dancing on the street, completely in his clown suit. He's promoting a store with a sign, but a group of kids run to him and take his sign and escape. Arthur hurries to give them chase, but he gets to an alley where they ambush him and break the sign on his head, then keep attacking and kicking him while he's on the floor. After work, Arthur goes to see his therapist. He's having a painful laugh. When he calms down, he comments that it is getting crazier out there. The therapist asks about his journal and the new entries he's done. Arthur hands her the journal and mentions that he also uses it as a joke diary for his career in stand-up comedy as the therapist passes the pages of disturbing jokes. After handing back the journal, she asks how he's feeling, but Arthur says he felt better locked up in the hospital. He asks to increase the medication, but the therapist declines. Arthur mentions that he just doesn't want to feel so bad anymore. Later on the bus, Arthur is upset, but the kid on the front seat is staring at him, so he starts making funny faces at the kid. The mother gets angry and asks him to stop, and Arthur gets an uncontrollable laugh attack. He hands her a card that says he's laughing because he has a neurological condition and he doesn't control it. Later he picks up his medication before going home. Once at his building, he checks the mailbox first and then goes up to the apartment. There, his mom Penny Fleck asks him if there's no new letter from Thomas Wayne. Arthur serves her some dinner in bed. She seems a little ill on the head. As she's having dinner, the show of Murray Franklin begins, and Arthur sits with his mom on her bed to watch the show. He even imagines he's in the audience. In his fantasy, he screams, "I love you, Murray," and gets the attention of the host, who asks him to stand up. He asks Arthur who is he. Arthur introduces himself and tells him that he lives with his mom and he takes pride in taking good care of his mother, that she tells him that he's in the world to spread joy and laughter. Murray asks him to him on stage and hugs him, tells him he's special and that he would give up all his fame and everything just to have a son like him. In real life, Arthur is still absorbed with his eyes on the screen, but smiling a little now. The next day at work, Arthur is getting his clown shoes ready. He is not wearing a shirt and we see he's covered in bruises. Randall, one of his coworkers, approaches and asks how is he, as he's heard about the beating. He hands him something, for protection he says, in a paper bag. Arthur checks it and sees that it's a gun, and says he should not have one, but Randall insists. Suddenly another coworker, Gary, interrupts them to tell Arthur that the boss is looking for him. In the boss's office, the boss tells him that they've received complaints about him leaving his post and never returning the sign. Even though Arthur tries to explain what happened, the boss doesn't believe him. He scolds Arthur and takes the costs from his paycheck. Later we see Arthur kick the trash in frustration. Later at his building, he shares the elevator with his neighbor Sophie and her daughter. They awkwardly joke a little. At home, Arthur gives his mom a bath while she talks about the letters again. Arthur says they won't worry anymore when he gets into the big clubs, but she doubts it. So much for support, huh? Later when his mom is in bed, Arthur is watching a movie when he decides to play around with his gun and accidentally shoots the wall, waking up his mom, so he has to make an excuse. The next day we see how Arthur is stalking Sophie. Later on, he sees a stand-up show and takes notes on it. Back at home, he continues to write down jokes. When he's interrupted by the doorbell, it's Sophie. She questions if he's been following her and he tells her the truth. She's actually relieved and they joke around. He invites her to his stand-up show, and she accepts it. The next day Arthur is performing as a clown in a children's hospital. When he accidentally drops his gun on the floor, he tries to hide it but won't work. Cut to the next scene. He's in a phone booth talking with his boss on the phone. The boss is pissed, and fires him for doing something like that, even though Arthur tries telling him a prop. The boss tells him that Randall snitched him on carrying a gun to work. Arthur takes the subway to go home. He's depressed. 3 guys in suits are in the same subway car, and they are bothering a woman sitting there. Suddenly Arthur gets a laugh attack, and this distracts the 3 guys from the lady, who escapes the scene. The guys approach him singing, "Send in the clowns," and start harassing him, taking his bag and his wig. Since he can't stop laughing, they beat him up. Arthur defends himself by pulling out his gun and shooting 2 of them. The other escapes and gets off the subway car. Arthur follows him and shoots him on the stairs. Arthur starts running out of the station and into the streets. He locks himself up in a bathroom, and suddenly, his worries and stress seem to disappear, as he eerily starts dancing. Later he returns to his building and goes directly to Sophie's home. He knocks on the door and kisses her as soon as she opens the door. He gets into the apartment and they close the door behind them. They seem to spend the night together. The next day he's back at the workplace picking up his belongings. The people are talking about the clown that shot the 3 men. The other employers offer sympathy for Arthur, but he gets pissed that Randall does it for how hypocritical it is. Arthur destroys the punch clock on his way out and gets out of the place. In the apartment, he takes his medicine and makes dinner for his mom, and joins her in watching TV. Thomas Wayne is talking about the 3 murdered men since they used to work in his company. He's considering running for mayor and claims the clown makeup suits the killer well because that's what that kind of people are. Those who do nothing with their lives are no more than clowns, he says. The next day at therapy, Arthur tells the therapist that finally people have started to notice him, but she interrupts him by telling him that they won't be able to continue. The government has cut the funds for this program. This is the last time they'll meet, and Arthur won't be able to get his medication anymore. That night, Arthur is getting ready to present his stand-up routine, and Sophie is in the public. He comes on stage and isn't able to talk due to his laughing condition. But once he calms down, he starts reading jokes from his notebook and it seems that everything has worked out. Arthur and Sophie walk together after the show. She sees the news of the murders. She thinks the clown is a hero. There are people wearing clown masks. They have dinner and have a good time. Later Arthur arrives home, and his mother is asleep in front of the TV. He sends her to bed, and she tells him he's got a new letter for Thomas Wayne. Arthur actually reads the letter this time, and it mentions that he is the illegitimate son of Thomas Wayne and he needs to help them for that. Arthur gets mad at his mom, who locks herself in the bathroom while he yells at her from the other side of the door. His mother explains that they had to hide it because of what the media would say. The next day Arthur is on the train looking at pictures of the Waynes. He's going to the Wayne mansion. When he gets there, a young Bruce Wayne is playing in the garden on the other side of the fence. Arthur observes him and approaches him. He performs a magic trick for the kid, but he's not amused. Arthur forces a smile on Bruce, but suddenly Alfred comes and interrupts this. He threatens Arthur to call the police if he doesn't leave right now. Arthur mentions that he's the son of Penny Fleck and that he just wants to see Thomas Wayne, but Alfred makes him go away. When Arthur goes home in the evening, there's an ambulance and paramedics there. They are going to take his mother to the hospital, so he goes with them. Later that night he's stepping out of the hospital to wait and is approached by 2 cops. They were talking with his mom when she had the stroke, and they ask him now about the subway murders. He tells them that he had a fake gun as a prop, and goes back to see his mom. In the hospital room, Sophie keeps Arthur company and leaves to get some coffee. Arthur puts the Murray Franklin show on TV. To his surprise, they put the clips from his stand-up routine on the show. He makes fun of him, calling him a joker. When Arthur is back at the apartment, the news shows that people are rioting outside a Wayne event. They use clowns as their icons for what Thomas Wayne called the lower-class people. Arthur sneaks into the building while the police are busy with the protest. Inside there's a movie theater, and he gets in there with a uniform of the employees. He follows Thomas Wayne to the bathroom to confront him about Penny. Thomas tells him that she's crazy, and reveals that Arthur is adopted. Arthur gets upset and starts yelling, which makes him burst into laughter. Thomas Wayne punches him and leaves the bathroom. Back in his apartment, he ignores the calls on the phone from the police and gets inside the fridge to spend the night there. The next morning, he receives a call from the producer of the Murray Franklin show to have him on the show. He accepts. Later he goes to the Arkham State Hospital to ask for Penny's file, and the clerk confirms that she has a history of domestic abuse to her son and that she's mentally ill, but he can't give the files to him. Arthur steals it and runs. When he reads the file, it confirms that he's adopted and that he was raised by Penny and her abusive boyfriend who got arrested later. Arthur is upset. He goes back to his building and breaks into Sophie's apartment unannounced. When she comes out of her daughter's room, she's scared and begs him not to hurt her daughter. Now it's about to get trippy. We see some flashbacks of Arthur remembering the time they've spent together, and we see that it was all his imagination. She was not with him on any of the occasions. The next day Arthur goes to visit his mom. He tells her his life is a comedy and not a tragedy as he thought, and suffocates and kills her with a pillow. Once he's back in the apartment, Arthur is getting ready for the show, practicing his lines and how he's going to shoot himself. He dyes his hair in preparation. But he's interrupted by the doorbell and grabs a pair of scissors before opening the door. Randall and Gary have come to pay respects for the loss of his mother. Randall also mentions that he's a little worried since the police have been interrogating the clowns around. Arthur snaps and stabs Randall with the scissors and punches him to death. Gary is scared, nearly crying, but Arthur allows him to leave without hurting him. He says Gary is the only one that's been nice to him. Arthur changes into a new colorful suit and leaves for the show. Going down the stairs to the street, the police follow him. They want to interrogate him again. Arthur escapes and enters the subway to lose the cops, taking advantage of the place being full of people with clown masks to attend a protest. Arthur steals a mask and tries to blend in. There's a lot of turmoil. The officer accidentally attacks one of the protesters and they get attacked in the subway. Arthur makes it to the studio and gets into the dressing room. Once there, Murray comes to check on him and gives him some small guidelines for the show. Arthur asks Murray to introduce him as Joker, 'cause that's what he called him when showing the clips. When he's called to the stage, he enters doing a dance, kisses one of the guests, and sits down on his couch. Murray asks if he's wearing clown makeup as a political statement with all the events going on at the moment. The Joker denies this and tells him that he's not political. He goes on to tell a joke about death and traffic accidents, but Murray and the audience scold him for that kind of humor. The Joker just proceeds to calmly confess to the 3 murders, and how they deserved it for being just awful. He goes on to say that Murray is also awful for making fun of him and brings him on the show to keep doing it. The Joker just keeps saying how society is messed up and that the rich and powerful forget about people like him. Franklin interrupts by trying to cut the show, but the Joker continues to make another joke, except that the punchline this time ends up shooting and killing Murray on live TV. They cut the transmission soon after. We see Arthur is arrested and transported in a police car. The streets are on fire, riots of people with clown masks have taken control, and the city is pure chaos by now. Joker is proud and happy about this. He says that the whole situation is beautiful. Suddenly the police car gets hit by an ambulance and he's knocked off. When he wakes up, he gets out of the car with the help of some rioters. Amid the disaster, Thomas Wayne and his family are leaving the theater and try to go through an alley when they are attacked by a mug with the clown mask. He robs them and shoots Thomas and Martha, leaving little Bruce Wayne alone, an orphan, with the bodies of his parents on the ground. Back with Joker, he gets on top of the hood of the police car to do his celebratory dance and clapping. His nose and mouth are bleeding from the crash, so he uses that blood to paint a bigger smile on his face. It all fades. Now we see Arthur. He's dressed all white and laughing a lot. He seems happy this time, even though he's in Arkham State Hospital. He's talking with a therapist, and she asks him what he finds so funny. He tells her that she wouldn't get it, and starts singing, "That's Life," while staring at her. We see Arthur walking out of the room, leaving blood footsteps as he walks in the hallway. And that's how we close this shocking movie. Subscribe for more engaging videos like this. Let's hit the bell icon and be the first to watch, like and comment to get featured in our next video.